So I decided to create a video to present my PowerPoint for our research paper. I did so because I'm not sure how to create a voiceover presentation of the PowerPoint. So if you could bear with me, I would greatly appreciate it. And here is my PowerPoint. I decided to write my research paper about why Maus by Art Spiegelman is considered true literature despite the fact that it is a comic. And I think that this is appropriate to the course because it sort of nods at our diagnostic essay, which was about what constitutes as true literature. Maus is one of my favorite books, and I'm really happy that I had the opportunity to write about it. So in the beginning of the research paper, I touched upon how in 1938 we first saw Superman out in comics, and he totally swept the nation. He became a role model for boys and for all Americans during the 1930s, 40s, 50s, and so on. And we still see him. He's relevant to this day. And that began the golden age of comics. Comics are illustrations that just pan from one frame to the next, and by doing so, they tell us a story. And one of the most prolific comic creators of the 20th century is New York's Art Spiegelman. Art Spiegelman wrote Maus in 1980. Maus went on to win a Pulitzer Prize in 1992 and was the first ever comic to do so. Maus is a detailing of Art hearing his father Vladik's recollection of his time in the Holocaust. It is one of the first ever to be considered a non-fiction graphic novel. What is interesting about Maus is that as we watch Vladik's story of his time in the Holocaust unfold, we can also observe the secondary story forming between Art, or Artie in the story, and his father. So the story starts out with him really interviewing his father, and throughout the novel he speaks to his mother and other parties about his father's retelling of the Holocaust and his time there. The layered stories allow us to see not only the nature of their relationship, but it gives us insight into how Vladik's trauma from the Holocaust has affected Art. And I love this photo of Art staring at a photo of his father. One of the authors I read of one of the articles I referenced states, "From relationships to identity, the trauma transcends and psychologically impacts second-generational survivors' daily lives. Stories, behaviors, and fears leave a lasting imprint on those raised by the people who are present for this historical and tragic event." We can see ways in which Art's father's trauma has affected him. And then I found this cartoon from Maus, which I think is even relevant to this slide, and it is that he states, "I mean, I can't even make any sense out of my relationship with my father. How am I supposed to make any sense out of Auschwitz, out of the Holocaust?" We can see ways in which our parents' early lives shape our own lives. Artie's father is neurotic. He considers him cheap. He's not sure what to attribute to just pure personality or to possibly living through the traumatic event of the Holocaust. In later books, Art writes about how his parents were always ready to pack a suitcase. They always told him to have a suitcase ready to go because you never know what's going to happen. And to me, that sounds traumatizing in that it's hard to live without feeling like you have some sort of safety net and that your life could be in danger. I'm sorry that the camera is slowly panning up. An example from my own life that I would like to provide is my mother grew up in socialist Moscow and I grew up in New Jersey. And there are ways in which I can see that her culture has just shaped her so greatly. And often, like growing up, she would talk about survival. It's important for survival. And for me, as just a young American kid, who I suppose was somewhat privileged, thought, like, what are you talking about survival? Like, life just seemed fine all the time. But it seems like for my mother, maybe that wasn't the case, and for Art's father, that was certainly not the case. What constitutes as literature? Literature is work that bonds people over the social condition. It is the storytelling of human experience. With literature, we relate to each other through our common experiences, and even if the storyline is different from our own, we use ethos to feel the emotions of others through their stories. I think that Maus is definitely considered great literature. It's heartbreaking, it's thought-provoking. I feel for Art, I feel for his father, and it's funny because I feel almost more for Art at sometimes, because it seems like such a foreign event to him, but at the same time has had so much to do with shaping his own life. Why is Maus literature? Aside from the heavy ethos this comic evokes, the structure of the layered stories in Maus and the representation of multi-generational trauma embodies a sophistication that far transcends what your typical comic can offer, which is actually why I chose the cover of Mad Magazine. Not to say that it was not a great magazine or comic, but I think that this like silly photo is not a particularly sophisticated photo, and I think that there's something very sophisticated about the work Maus. Even the drawings, they're so beautiful, and you can see sadness, and you can see pensiveness and thought in the characters, even though they're just cartoon mice. And something that is cute about the story, and I think actually is a great tool that Art uses, is that he draws the Jews as mice, the Germans as cats, I think Americans are pigs, and so forth. And there is like one gypsy in the story, I think, who is a butterfly. And it is an easy way to visually see the differences in like sides, because I think that in the Holocaust, identity and sides were important. Like, which side were you on? Who were you? What is your identity? And all of this. And I think that the animals he chooses are just a great way to represent the different identities and how strongly they really, I guess, show who you are. Art travels through his parents' stories while showing the ways in which they underwrite his own. This craftsmanship is nothing short of genius writing, which is why when one reads Maus, they are reading true literature. That is one reason that I think that Maus is so genius, is that as Art is telling the story of his father telling his story, it does show how it underwrites his own story, because you can see from their interactions like the idiosyncrasies that like drive Art crazy, and the ways in which he's fearful and thoughtful, and things that he does not also understand about his father, but learns to understand. Some lessons I learned. Something I wish I did a better job of creating was a skeleton for my pre-writing. Typically I like to do so, but once I got started on the annotated bibliography, I felt like I was able to just start writing. I felt like my annotated bibliography was very detailed, and I did say a lot in there, and I just started to write, and it just started flowing. But without the skeleton, it was difficult at times to like keep track of where I was going and what point I was making and which order the points should go in. I learned it is difficult to record a PowerPoint presentation on an iPhone, and I wish I did my presentation during class, but it is what it is, and I do hope that this is clear enough for everyone to take something away from. What helped me? I picked a book that I absolutely love. This book has brought me to tears. I read it during like felt like a special time in my life. I don't think anything crazy was going on, but I just felt emotionally close to the characters and interested and invested, and it brought me a bit closer to just the pageantry of human history. I do enjoy history quite a bit, and this was such a creative and artistic way to tie the reader to history. If you feel passionately about the subject, once you start writing, it just begins to flow. Yeah, I was a little nervous about the research paper, but really once I started writing, like, I was happy with what I was writing. It really flowed, and I think part of it was because I love this book, and I find the topic of the Holocaust completely fascinating. In writing a research paper, that is why it is so important to pick a topic you care about. That is if you have the option to do so, and I'm very grateful that we had the option to pick our topic. So thank you for that, Professor. And using Baruch's library search engine was majorly helpful to me. It helped me find nearly all of my sources and had so many relevant articles on my topic. I pretty much exclusively use that, I think with the exception of one or two sources. Yeah, so with that, I suppose I will wrap up my presentation. And thank you for listening, and thank you, Professor, for the opportunity to pick our topic. And I look forward to hearing from whoever comments on my discussion. So thank you.